The miracle of miracles, the technology works. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Little. I'm the Chancellor of the University of Michigan-Dearborn, and it is a really unique pleasure to welcome all of you to this forum on urban farming. It is really fabulous to see the breadth of crowd here who've come together to talk about these issues throughout the day today, and the breadth of organizations and constituencies and interests who are represented in this room. We've had, and I have to refer here to the faculty and the provost, lots of conversations in building up for this event. And what we have come to understand is how much excitement there is around the various aspects of this opportunity for Detroit and for Southeast Michigan. And so the time is right to have this forum on urban farming. University of Michigan-Dearborn, I believe, is a perfect place to host this forum because UM-Dearborn has declared itself as a metropolitan university, as a university which is really sincerely dedicated to bringing together its faculty, its talented students, its interested and concerned staff into partnership with the many constituencies of Southeast Michigan and the city of Detroit. We want the University of Michigan-Dearborn to be a great partner and intellectual resource and a civic engagement resource in service to the many, many issues and challenges we face here in Southeast Michigan. It's also suitable because we have a long, long history of environmental concern and environmental activism on this campus. I think of, for example, the Environmental Interpretive Center, which has hosted tens of thousands of school children every year and taken them through the natural areas, introduced them to various frogs of unknown species and type, but really charming organisms of some sort. Lots of young people, children from second grade, third grade, and on up, have come to understand better the relationships between the Rouge River, the ecology of water, and the challenges which we face here in the industrialized Southeast Michigan. The organic farm that we have here, or the organic garden, really, I have to say it's not exactly a farm, but the organic gardening project, which we've had going on this campus for 40 years, for a very long time, is another instance of the commitment and the interest which people of this campus and people of this region have had in organic farming and in linking their own activities to the production of food and to finding appropriate balance between growing, eating, and consuming. So this is a great place to have this forum. I know that there will be great results coming out of this. The provost has been very clear. She is hopeful that there will be action items which we can follow up on. And the day will be devoted to learning. I would just like to close by offering my congratulations to the faculty group. It's a large faculty group who have been working on this for at least 6 months under the absolutely spectacular leadership of our new provost, Kate Davey, who picked up this topic almost instantly in arriving on the campus in July of 2009. It shows real academic leadership to kind of figure out pretty quickly what are some of the issues which can mobilize and energize many of us here on the campus. This issue has turned out to be an absolute home run. So I would like to introduce to you Kate Davey.
Thanks, Dan, and welcome, everyone. I had no idea what urban farming was when I came here last July. And I have to admit that it has been a steep learning curve and a really exciting and pleasurable journey to this day. Let me tell you a little bit about the day before I introduce the panelists. This event, this summit, is the faculty, the academic contribution to our 50th anniversary here at the University of Michigan-Dearborn. We wanted to do an event that really fits with us as an enterprise, as a university. And of course, the centerpiece for us is research and teaching. So we asked ourselves, a group of faculty, what is it that a university is uniquely positioned to do? And we came up with the fact that we, as a university, can bring multiple disciplinary perspectives to bear on any topic. This is not usually what we do. We're very siloed in our disciplines in academia. So we thought it would be really interesting to bring faculty from across 4 different colleges to look at a particular topic. So we also wanted to explore how we can engage our students in experiential learning that enhances academic excellence and that serves the community, adds value to the community. Now, it is our want as faculty to determine what the issues are and then go about resolving them. This is not what we're here to do today. We are not the experts in urban farming. Those of you in the community who are in the trenches, who have been nurturing this movement, you are the experts in this case. So we've put together these roundtable discussions so that we can learn from you, and hopefully what will emerge today are partnerships between faculty and community members, between community organizations themselves, between faculty and faculty on research projects that promise to be fruitful. So we've surveyed our faculty to see if there was any interest, not in the topic of urban food systems writ large. Over a third of the faculty responded to that survey. Now, if you know anything about academia, more than a third of the faculty responding to anything is extraordinary. So we knew we had faculty who were interested in bringing their perspectives on economics, science, social justice to bear on this topic. So we are looking to how we all can work together going forward in this movement on urban food systems in general and urban farming in particular. We'd really like to cross boundaries today. And so we have set up our roundtable discussions to cross those boundaries and to produce the most fruitful conversations. Let me tell you what the university is committed to. We would like to provide seed funding so to speak, to prepare grant proposals for any projects that emerge from this summit. We are committed to getting our students involved, either through service learning, experiential learning, internships with members of the community. We're also committed to not letting this end today, to continuing this conversation. So you will notice that on April 7th, there is another urban farming event planned on the campus that's going to address specifically the business of urban farming. So now for the day, very briefly. These roundtable discussions, you may have already chosen a theme that you are particularly interested in. Maybe that theme is urban farming, but we can't have 250 people at the urban farming roundtable. So I would like to encourage you all to join a table on any theme, because I guarantee you the conversations will be broad enough so that all of your interests and everything that you would like to say will be covered. So please help us. We designed this program for about 50 people, and there are 250 of you. So it's going to be messy, but it's going to be fun, and it's going to be dynamic, and we just need your cooperation in landing on tables that are reasonable size for a reasonable discussion. You're also going to see Post-its everywhere, 3x5 Post-its, where emerging thoughts in your discussion, you can capture them on a Post-it, post it literally at your table, and as things start to congeal and ideas start to come together, there will be a poster board between tables so you can start to organize thinking that way. We will, Robert Kenner, we are so thrilled. Robert Kenner, the filmmaker of Food, Inc., is with us today. And if you got to see his film yesterday, it is really a powerful statement on the state of our food and food production in this country. Robert's going to be sharing his thoughts with us over lunch. Lunch. It's 50% organic, and it's 50% locally grown. Over dessert, we will come back together in this room and really pull together some of the major themes that are emerging from this summit. At the end of the day, you will see this poster over here called Seating. If the spirit moves you, take a Post-it note and write your thought on what we can do together and slap it on that piece of paper on your way out the door. I have a few more housekeeping pieces, but let me bring the panel up here and get started on the panel. Since we're running late, we're going to let the panel go longer than is indicated in your schedule, so we have a really full discussion with the panel. Bruce, Malik. I would ask that if you have any noise-making electronic devices that you turn them off at this point. That would be greatly appreciated. Have we not got a chair for you?
That's okay.
Grab a chair. Nick, can I engage you to... Bruce Pietrkowski, who's finding a seat right now, is a faculty member, professor of economics here at the University of Michigan-Dearborn, and he is the director of the Urban and Regional Studies program on the campus, and he is going to facilitate the discussion. On my immediate left is Ashley Atkinson. She's the director of project development and urban agriculture for the greening of Detroit. She works with community groups to plan tree plantings, community gardens, and other green space in Detroit. She's worked in the field of community gardening, urban greening, and vacant land reuse for over 12 years. She's a graduate of both Michigan State and the University of Michigan, where she studied international development, community organization, and environmental land use planning. Dr. Orrin Hesterman, he is sitting to the right of Susan and Bruce, is the inaugural president and chief executive officer of Fair Food Network, a nonprofit organization dedicated to redesigning the food system in a manner that upholds the fundamental rights to healthy, fresh, and sustainably grown food. He's made significant contributions to the funding of healthy food and farming via his leadership of the Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems Funders Group. Orrin researched and taught forage and cropping systems management, sustainable agriculture, and leadership development before joining the Kellogg Foundation in 1996, where he envisioned and nurtured food system projects, partnerships and collaborations, national and international in scope. Orrin holds graduate degrees from the University of California, Davis, and the University of Minnesota. Dr. Kami Potakuchi, did I get it? is an associate professor of urban planning at Wayne State University and director of Seed Wayne, a campus community collaboration dedicated to building sustainable food systems on the campus of Wayne State and in Detroit neighborhoods. Kami has published on a variety of food planning topics. She co-authored the Community and Regional Food Planning Policy Guide, which was formally adopted by the American Planning Association in 2007. She serves on the Detroit Food Policy Council, the Detroit Food and Fitness Collaborative, and she's also served 2 terms on the governing board of the National Community Food Security Coalition. Susan Schmidt, sitting to Bruce's right, helped us tremendously in getting this lunch together, by the way. I have to acknowledge Susan's tremendous, generous help. She's the Director of Food Service and Catering at the Henry Ford here in Dearborn. She enhances the visitor experience at the Henry Ford by developing menus, products, and programs that interpret food history and traditions, which in turn provide insight into the cultural aspects of American and Michigan foodways. She has transformed food purchasing and service practices at the Henry Ford to include local and regionally sourced products and ingredients, and she champions these relationships with outreach into the larger community. Susan's leadership and collaborations involve various organizations, including FSEP, Food System Economic Partnership, and Great Lakes Bioneers Detroit, the Greening of Detroit, Seed Wayne, and the Michigan Culinary Tourist Alliance. She holds a degree from Rutgers University. Last but not least, Malik Kenyatta Yakini is an educator, business owner, and activist who is committed to freedom and justice for humanity in general and African people in particular. He serves as executive director of the Nsorama, did I get that right? Nsorama Institute Public School Academy, one of Detroit's leading African-centered schools. He is the CEO of Black Star Educational Management. Malik is the founder and chairman of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, which operates a 2-acre farm in Detroit and spearheaded efforts to establish the Detroit Food Policy Council. He views the food justice, food security movement as part of the larger struggle for freedom, justice, and equality. 2 final housekeeping. After the roundtable discussions, please return here to this room. Aramark will be calling people up to the buffet for lunch by table. There will be an email blast to all of you by the time you leave here with an evaluation of today's program, giving you a chance to evaluate it. In your packet, there's an inventory, anything that we want to capture all of your thoughts before you leave today. We will be pulling together all of this and getting it back out to you. And finally, again, we're running a little late. We're not going to cut the panel short, so we'll adjust our timing accordingly. And with that, I will turn it over to Bruce Pietrzakowski.
Thanks, Kate. The way we talked about the panel, it's evolved over time how we're going to structure this. I also realized that I think my role was to stand here the entire time because I didn't have a seat. So I'm actually going to probably do that and try to direct traffic. But what I'm going to do is ask a few questions of the panelists, but then after that, open it up to the audience. And then we'll have a back and forth, and then I might, if you run out of questions, which I tend to doubt, but if you run out of questions, I have more questions of my own. So we'll have an interactive, iterative Q&A. But since I'm moderating, I get the first question. So what I'd like to know is from each of you, if you could explain a little bit to us briefly. I know you have a lot to say, but briefly explain a little bit to us about your organization, in particular, your successes to date and also your challenges. And to make it even more interesting, while you answer, if you could keep in mind that for those of us who are unfamiliar with the terms food security, if you could explain what you mean by food security, and also the term that gets mentioned a lot by different people in different ways, sustainability. what does sustainability mean in terms of your work and your organization? So I will go in random order, but I'm going to start with Ashley.
Okay. I think it's on. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Just to reiterate, I'm Ashley Atkinson, and I'm the Director of Urban Agriculture for the Greening of Detroit. We, in our Urban Agriculture Department, work with a lot of really great partners throughout the city of Detroit and in southeastern Michigan to coordinate a program called the Garden Resource Program Collaborative, which was initiated in 2003 with 80 gardens. Through that collaborative, we provide resources, education, and support to family, so backyard gardeners, community gardeners, and school gardeners in Detroit, Hamtramck, and Highland Park. And in 2009, so 6 years into the program, we worked with 875 gardens across that target area. So we've grown tenfold in the last 6 years. And, we have a lot of sustainability in the program, meaning gardens not only return to the program every year and thus return to gardening, the gardens get more productive, they expand, they become more stable, which allows them to bring all kinds of benefits to the communities that they're working in. In addition to our work with the Garden Resource Program Collaborative, the Greening of Detroit manages a couple of farm sites around the city. Romanowski Park is 2 acres in a city park in southwest Detroit that we've managed for 4 years, and we've had an apprenticeship program, an urban farming apprenticeship program, that is paired with that site, where we've trained a number of some of the best farmers in the city working now. We've got a great apprenticeship program. The other site, which we will begin managing soon, is the Detroit Market Garden, which is a 3-acre farm in the middle of Eastern Market. And that will be being constructed, let's just say that, this spring with production happening this summer and fall. So that's really exciting, and I guess I could say that that's my challenge, because it would be the city's first principal use production-focused farm, legal production-focused farm, and it will be a model for future market gardens across the city. So 3-acre production-focused, family-run businesses that are produce businesses and contributing in multiple ways throughout the city of Detroit.
Thank you. Keeping you on your toes. Susan.
Is this microphone on?
I think so.
Well, perhaps you're wondering what a girl like me is doing on a panel like this, since I'm from a museum. And what we do at the Henry Ford is sort of a tandem approach to and connection to urban agriculture. And one of the things that I found about 7 years ago when I began trying to source local food was that you couldn't do it. So in the process of trying to figure that out with my team to just get local food for our food service, which we have continued to expand throughout our campus, we found that as impossible as it was in our minds, it really wasn't when we started to actually just try to do it. So we thought that it would make sense for us as an educational institution and a place that shows people the history of agriculture in not only in Detroit but in the United States, that we could serve as a resource for what has been and to show people what self-reliance and being able to feed ourselves used to be like, and use that as a context for what we do today as far as trying to make and remake connections with growing food and eating real food. We found that many of our visitors, and particularly the hundreds of thousands of school children that we get who come to visit us every year, don't even know that food comes from the ground. We've lost the connection to what food really means and what it means not only to nourish our bodies but to nourish our social structures. So we look at food like that, and we try to educate people about what we're doing and why we're doing it in a intellectual way, and also in a on-the-ground way. We have working farms at Greenfield Village, so people can actually see what used to happen. We can give context to some of those practices that we're trying to return to, and also perhaps examine some of the good, bad, and the ugly of where we've been with agriculture and the technological advances that have occurred between the time periods that we focus on at Greenfield Village. At the same time, you can actually, if you're a visitor, actually taste local food, because we've incorporated local foods that we've been able to source into not only our historic tavern, but campus-wide as much as possible. Certainly a lot of it is seasonal, but we think it's important to be able to make all kinds of firing connections for people to hopefully be able to take away what they will to be able to make some perhaps better decisions in their life. As far as the urban agriculture connection is concerned, as we began to go down this path, it led us to realize that there was a huge and robust grassroots movement happening in Detroit and Southeast Michigan and Michigan as a state around these types of topics. And as I got to know the people on this panel and actually started to source food in some cases from them, it became a situation where we don't sort of say, hey, we have a lot of money to spend, so we want to buy all your food. I also feel that we, and what we do is serve as a safety net, if you will, that as the production ramps up in Detroit and in urban farming, if there is food left over that hasn't gone to the residents who are either growing the food or selling the food to sustain their operations, if they need to sell it, then we buy it. And it can be, we've had people sort of just show up and go, hey, I have these great potatoes that I grew, do you want to buy them? And we say yes. And we are continuing to grow those connections with the urban agriculture networks that are happening and continuing to grow, and I pun intended. And we think we can serve as the resource sort of in that tandem way, both as an intellectual and demonstrative resource, and also as a real way to help these operations sustain themselves.
Great, thank you, Susan. I like that point about being the buyer of, I don't want to say last resort, but the idea that you do need markets, and you do need to create markets, and you need reliability in terms of the demand for the products that are being sold by farmers. And so I appreciate that. If we can move on to Malik, could you talk about some of the successes, challenges, and your take on sustainability and food security?
Okay, good morning. How's everyone doing?
Good morning.
First of all, it's very difficult for me to talk sitting down because I'm passionate about this, but I'm going to try to
stand up.
Yeah.
Come on.
Secondly, I want to give greetings on behalf of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, and I always like to take time to honor my ancestors, both my personal ancestors and the ancestors of African American people in general, who contributed greatly to the development of this country, particularly in terms of agriculture. So I would be remiss if I didn't start by saying that. Thirdly, I want to give greetings to Kent Murray and to Katie Anderson-Levitt. I don't know if she's here. Hey, how are you? Who we've worked with for the last several years to run a very excellent program for young people that develops the concept of environmental stewardship in them. So I'm very pleased to be here in another capacity, another but related capacity today. The Detroit Black Community Food Security Network is very concerned, first of all, about Detroit's majority African American population participating and playing a leadership role in this idea of urban farming in Detroit. And frankly, most of the people doing this work at this point are white. Most of the people leading the organizations are white. And they're good-hearted people, they're good-intentioned people, but there's an imbalance when you have a city which is, according to the last census, 83% African American but the majority of the leadership in this movement doesn't reflect that community. So part of our job is to organize our community to participate and to play a leadership role in this movement. We are not objects that people come in and do things to, but we are active participants in creating our own reality. And with that, maybe I'll acknowledge my friend over there, former member of the Black Panther Party. Please throw your hands up. Who has a garden on the east side? That's Brother Wayne, and they're doing some very good work. And I acknowledge the Black Panther Party because, of course, a lot of this work about food security grew out of the efforts of the Black Panther Party to create free breakfast programs for school children, which was later adopted on a very widespread level throughout the United States. But I always want to kind of connect us historically to the work that's being done, because this is really not new work. And so we always want to position African American people in their proper place in terms of how this work has evolved. So given that context, the specific things that we do is we operate D-Town Farm, which is a 2-acre farm which is striving to be certified as an organic farm in Rouge Park. And I say striving to be because you might know that organic is a term which is controlled by the USDA. And in fact, some people say organic is not good enough. Most people think organic means that you don't use any chemicals, and it doesn't really mean that. You need to really read specifically how the USDA defines organic. But we do grow without the use of chemical pesticides and chemical fertilizers. And we've been very successful over the last 2 years at producing a number of fruits, vegetables, and herbs that we sell at farmers markets throughout the city. We sold to the Detroit Public Schools through the FSEP's Farm to School program this past fall, and we'll continue selling to them this year. We sell to a number of individuals, and we are selling to restaurants as well. We're looking forward to really ramping up our year-round production when we install a 96-foot hoop house this spring, and we'll be able to at least produce salad greens and cool weather crops throughout the year. In addition to the D-Town Farm, and let me back up just a minute and say also what we're concerned about is creating a model, because as this urban agriculture movement develops, we need places that people can come and actually see how this idea manifests. So an important part of our farm is agritourism. And so this past fall, we installed a number of signs that represent various learning stations throughout our farm. So people can come and learn about composting, or can learn about beekeeping, can learn about the role of Africans in agriculture in Detroit, can learn about hoop house technology, about water conservation. And so we are developing our farm as an agritourism destination so that we can become an educational institution as well as a growing institution. We also were instrumental in creating the Detroit Food Policy Council, which I'm honored to have been elected to serve as chair of, and also Ashley is a member of the Detroit Food Policy Council, and Kami is a member of the Detroit Food Policy Council. They were also instrumental in the formation of that group. And it's very important because the Detroit Food Policy Council is charged with implementing the recommendations in the Detroit Food Security Policy, which our organization wrote along with the input of some of the people on this panel and other people in the agricultural movement, to define kind of a vision of what we think a food secure and food just city looks like. So we now have a body which is an official body which has been appointed by the Detroit City Council, with the exception of one seat which was appointed by the mayor, which is charged with implementing these various recommendations to help make Detroit more food secure and food just. We also have a monthly food buying co-op, which is called the Ujamaa Co-op, because we think that part of the problem in the food system as we know it is the supermarket model. It's not just how food is grown, but it's also how food is distributed and sold. And so we think the cooperative model is something that we need to look at and need to use much more often. So we do, at this point, have a monthly co-op where people are able to buy all of the items that you could buy at a health food store, but get them at reduced prices. We have a youth program, which is called the Food Warriors Youth Development Program, which operates at 3 Detroit area schools, in which we have 75 young people who are learning about the industrial food system and its dangers, and are learning about the advantages of sustainable agriculture and urban agriculture. And it's a program where they learn both the theory and the hands-on part of it. So they're actually developing gardens at their schools. So we're very proud of that program, and we're attempting to develop a cadre of food activists, because this is certainly an intergenerational struggle. And so we need young people who are growing up and see agriculture in a new light. And particularly for African American people, we have a challenge because most of our young people associate agriculture with the enslavement experience in this country. And so we're reframing urban farming as an act of self-determination and an act of resistance against oppression, not an act which enriches someone else. So we're developing a cadre of young people who can continue this struggle and who will be advocates and activists in our community in terms of developing food security and food justice. And finally, we're active participants, as some of the other people in the room today are, Pat, Colin, and Claire. We're active participants in an effort which has been ongoing for the last 5 or 6 months to discuss the idea of race, food, and resistance. And we are not at all, when I say we, I should say our organization is not at all squeamish about raising the issue of white supremacy. And I would be negligent, in fact, if I didn't put that right on the table today, particularly as we're talking about urban agriculture in Detroit. This group, Race, Food, and Resistance, has been discussing the ideas of white supremacy and white privilege and how those things manifest within the food system. So not only do they manifest within inside of the food system that we're struggling to change, but they also manifest within this burgeoning urban agricultural movement. So we think it's very important that we have open and honest discussions about that, because we can't resolve those issues without putting them squarely on the table. So we've been active participants and in the leadership of this series of discussions about race, food, and resistance. And that group is also sponsoring, in fact, I'm making the first public announcement of this, is sponsoring an Undoing Racism in the Detroit Food System training on March 20th and 21st at Marygrove College that we hope many of the people in this room will participate in which will look at this idea of race and how it impacts the food system and how we create justice. And in fact, we can't have justice within the food system without racial justice and without social justice in general. And then finally, I'll end by saying that from our perspective, food security, and probably most of the panelists would agree because there's a kind of generally accepted definition of food security. Food security is the idea that a community, all of the members of a community, have adequate amounts of culturally appropriate, nutritious food which is easily accessible. They don't have to drive or ride the bus 10, 12 miles to get it. And we like to add the idea that it is grown sustainably. It's grown in a way that shows respect for the environment and enables us to do that for a long period of time. And so sustainability also, in our viewpoint, would include this idea of respect for the earth and respect for the environment, and growing food in such a way that it does not damage the environment and in fact adds to the environment, because sustainable agriculture can be a benefit to the environment. But also sustainability has an economic component. We have to demonstrate that urban agriculture is not just a neat idea, but it's also a viable economic engine to begin to re-envision what Detroit looks like. And then thirdly, social justice is an important part of sustainability, because we're not just talking about the earth and money, but ultimately food is about people as well. So we can't have a sustainable food system unless we have social justice. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Malik. Could we hear next from Orrin Hesterman? And you're welcome to get up or sit at whatever you prefer.
I'm good right here. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I want to just let you know how honored I am to be seated with my colleagues here, and really honored to be surrounded in my work life with colleagues like this and the kinds of work they're doing in this community, which is, in my experience, second to none in terms of what's happening in food systems, innovative food systems work throughout the country. But I want to tell you, my friends, we sit in the middle of a very broken food system. It's as broken as our healthcare system, our education system, our financial system, or our energy and transportation system. It's a system that's broken and out of control, and we see the symptoms of that breakage all around. And all you have to do is take a look at Mr. Kenner's film, Food, Inc., and you'll get a lot of good information or bad information, however you want to interpret it, about this broken food system. Whether you look at symptoms that are environmental symptoms, like a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, the difficulty of small and mid-sized farmers to create economic viability in our rural areas, issues of health and childhood obesity. You know, I'm very happy that our First Lady is looking at childhood obesity as a key issue. My advice would be, don't look at it as a problem to be solved. Look at it as a symptom of a broken food system, because that's what it is. And issues of food access, many of the issues that we're hearing Malik talk about this morning, these are symptoms of a system that's broken and out of control. And anytime we have any of these broken systems happening, the symptoms are felt first and worst in our low-income communities of color in this country, and that is what's happening with the food system. It's not a problem to be solved. You know, we cannot look at urban farming or food systems work as trying to solve a specific problem, because these are not problems to be solved. It is a system that needs to be redesigned. It needs to be redesigned on principles of equity, principles of diversity, principles of economic or ecological integrity, principles of economic viability for everybody in that system. You know, for many years, and I've been involved with looking at the broken food system and redesign attempts for many years, and for many years, most of the efforts on this food systems work have been primarily in middle or upper middle class white communities, much like what we have seen with the environmental movement over the years in my generation. The unique opportunity, and my belief is that as long as that movement stays largely in those communities, it's not going to have much impact. That the unique opportunity we have in Detroit and Southeast Michigan is the opportunity that Malik is talking about, and it's the opportunity to redesign a food system from the inside up and from the ground up, and not imposed from the outside by anybody else. And so I think it's a unique opportunity in repairing a broken food system and redesigning it that we have in Detroit and Southeast Michigan that I think is unparalleled anywhere else in the United States. And I'm very happy that that here at University of Michigan-Dearborn there's a recognition of this and an engagement with the community and engagement with the students. I think it's fabulous and something that I see happening all over, and I want all of us to encourage it. So let me just take a minute to talk about Fair Food Network, the nonprofit organization that I founded and lead with a mission to work with others to design a food system that upholds the fundamental right to healthy, fresh, and sustainably grown food, recognizing that access to healthy food and food that's grown sustainably and locally is not something that should be only there for the privileged. It's there. It should be there as a fundamental right for everybody, just like healthy air to breathe, clean water to drink, healthy food to eat needs to be a fundamental right, and we have to approach it as such. So, you know, the big question is, how do you get there? How do you go from a system that is so broken that we see these symptoms all around us to one where we have a system that's upholding these kind of fundamental rights? And I think it really comes down to two basic approaches. One is community engagement, and the second is public policy. And the community engagement piece, I'm surrounded by some of the best folks in the country here working on community engagement and public policy at the local level, figuring out ways to create models in this community and in the community of Detroit of a food system that is upholding those fundamental rights. But my belief is that without change in public policy, that's only going to take us so far. We have the food system looks the way it is today largely because we've had decades of misguided public policy. Public policy that may have worked back in the 1930s when our food and agricultural policy was first created, but policies that now are having both intended and unintended impacts, especially felt most harshly in communities like Detroit. So let me end just by telling you about one project that Fair Food Network is working on with many of the folks on this table and others of you I know that are here today. And it's a project where we're raising funds initially from the philanthropic community to increase the value of purchasing power for anybody who comes to a farmer's market to buy locally grown food with their food stamps, or what's now called the Michigan Bridge Card, or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance. So we have a $60 billion program nationwide now of federal funds that are offered to low-income households to help them buy food. In Detroit alone, that's $450 million a year that's circulating in the Detroit food economy through food stamps. And we know that about 60% right now of all of those redemptions of food stamps in Detroit are at liquor stores and convenience stores. So there's a huge opportunity to shift that. So the project that we're leading at Fair Food Network enables anybody who comes to a farmer's market in Detroit, and our hope is soon that statewide, to any farmer's market in the state of Michigan that can accept the electronic benefits card, the Bridge Card, they'll get double their money. So if they spend $20 off their Bridge Card for food at the farmer's market, they'll get $40 worth of buying power when they purchase Michigan-grown fruits and vegetables. And we hope to also pilot this program in a number of independent grocers in Detroit as well. And ultimately, it encourages people to use their federal food assistance to buy better food for themselves and their families. It supports a local food economy, but ultimately what it also does, it demonstrates an approach that we should have federal policy following. Just as Malik talked about, it was the Black Panther Breakfast Program that helped the federal government finally see that there could be a national free breakfast program that could assist many people and assist our society. My belief is that we have a $60 billion food stamp subsidy right now that does put money in the hands of low-income households. It's needed, but it's largely right now a subsidy for that broken food system. It largely goes to support the system that's keeping people hungry and unhealthy. And we need to shift that with our federal dollars, and that means shifting food policy, not just practice. So again, thank you for the honor of letting me be here today with you, and I look forward to spending more time with you this morning.
Great. Thank you, Warren. Thanks also for pointing out the policy steps that can be taken, the policy steps that are being taken to change the system. If we could hear from Kami next.
Phew.
Last but not least.
Going last is a double-edged sword, as you can see. I have nothing left to say. It's not quite true. To echo Oren's sentiment, I am very grateful to be here, especially with the folks on this table. Can you hear me? I heard some. I wear two hats, two main hats. One is as a planner, as an urban and regional planner, who's very active in the American Planning Association, trying to spread the message about food planning and policy among professionals who work in communities and regions nationally, but also as a faculty member, professor who's trying to get my own institution to become more responsive in the ways that it functions to sustainable food system issues. So let's talk about the planner hat. In 1996-97, my colleague Jerry Kaufman, emeritus at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I did a survey of planners nationally to ask them, what are you doing about food? You plan for housing, you plan for roads, you plan for the economy, land use, etc. What are you doing in terms of planning for food? And, the response we got, pretty much everyone scratched their head and they said, well, food is important, we all eat, but we're not doing very much. I mean, when supermarkets want to build, they build, and so what is there for us to do? And that was the dominant response. We really don't know what to do. The private market takes care of it. What should we do? And as we got talking to more people and thinking about this and writing papers, a core group of us decided that this was a topic that was important enough to broach to the American Planning Association, which is the leading professional organization. And in 2005, we approached the organization and said, can we have a discussion going? Can we have a white paper written that we can then have the delegates, this is a democratic process, comment on? And we went ahead and did that, and we presented the white paper, and the response was really, the best word is tepid. It's a good idea. Maybe there's a time for it 10 years down the road, not now. Why planners? Why now? And then at the end, I mean, so, our spirits were, we spent a lot of time engaging planners in this conversation. And then one person, gets up slowly and he rubs his beard and he says, food, what's next? Planning for clothes? But fortunately, there was enough leadership that encouraged us and asked us to go ahead with developing a policy with no guarantee that it would be accepted by the planning community. And so we spent the next year engaging planners from all over the country, and we put together a policy, a community and regional food policy document, and it was presented to the Delegates Assembly the following year. And the responses were, can we add this word in clause 3C, and can we move 3C up to 2B? It was that kind of a feedback. I mean, the majority of the planners got it, and it was adopted the very same afternoon. So in 10 years, from planners saying, well, we don't quite know what to do, to the leading professional body adopting a policy guide which would provide direction to planners working at the local level, and to policymakers at the federal level, I thought was a great success. And we're still building on that success. We still have a long way to go, but it really shows that the time has come for this topic. So locally, I direct a program called Seed Wayne, which stands for Sustainable Food Systems Education and Engagement in Detroit and Wayne State University. And sustainability has been defined by my colleagues here, but let me boil it down to how I describe it, and that is the 4 E's. We know the triple bottom line of economy, environment, and equity. But I want to add, again, echoing Oren's point about engagement. We ain't going to have sustainability if all of us don't participate as citizens, not just as consumers. It's important that we use spend our dollars wisely and think about the choices we're making with our wallets. It's also very important that we act as citizens, as in our communities, in our groups in our church groups, in our nonprofit groups, but also in terms of shaping federal policy. Seed Wayne really tries to build sustainable food systems by integrating as comprehensively as possible, and there are some challenges there, with all the core functions in the university: education, research, which are well known, engagement, which we are only now beginning to get into in a comprehensive way, but also operations. We spend a lot of our money in the university on food. We need to think more carefully about where that money is going, what kinds of practices our choices, our decisions are supporting, and to make sure that our money really helps build our communities and our regions and capacity. So we have programs on campus and in the community, and everything we do is in collaboration. That's really something that we want to model. There are no lone heroes in the food system. Everything is done through collaboration and networks. And we have a new definition for R&D in Seed Wayne, and it's called rip off and duplicate. We ripped off and duplicated Susan's wonderful system of local hiring, so we don't have to actually go out and seek farmers. All we need to do is connect our food service providers with their program, and they already have the lessons and the model drawn up, so we just need to duplicate their efforts. We are a member of the GRPC, the Garden Resource Program. We are not self-contained. We come and take our seeds and our transplants from the GRPC, and we try to send our students out to the training sessions and so on. And so it is really for us to participate in the efforts as they are already existing and try to add to them. So on campus, we have two campus gardens that students are actively involved in, a rooftop demonstration system that's self-contained. We have a weekly farmers market. We offer 27 weeks, including the MoBucks program that Oren was talking about, where we doubled the food stamp benefit on 5 days. Very successful program. And then we offer university lectures and student-led workshops and research projects on campus. In the community, we're building a 4,000 square foot passive solar greenhouse for year-round production at the Capuchin Soup Kitchen, again, to demonstrate that local, organic, the best food is not just for people with money and the ability to pay. It should be for everyone. And we're also working with corner stores in Detroit neighborhoods to get them to carry more fresh fruits and vegetables. And the idea is not that people will buy all the fruits and vegetables needed to assemble their meals in the corner store, but to make fresh fruits and vegetables an option available in their neighborhoods, just as candy and soda are. So with that, I'm going to stop and take your questions.
Great, thank you. Wow, that's great. Thank you, Kami. Thanks to all our panelists for telling us more about their organizations and some of the challenges and successes of their organizations. Now, it's your turn. I would encourage you to come up to the front. There are microphones here in the front. Best if you come up to the front, because it's such a large audience that if you're in a corner, you probably won't be heard on the other side of the room. So if you come up to the front, please tell us who you are and give us a question. Don't be shy. I know most of you are not shy.
My name is Susan Bennett, and I'm a member of the community and of Crowley Park, which is in the process of starting an organic garden. But my question is, and you seem to think that you've defined it, but it's not clear to me, what exactly do you mean by sustainable?
Well, I don't know if I could say there is one definition. It means many, many things, and I suppose there are sort of, if you look it up in the dictionary, what that means. But for my work, and I think the collaborations that I have with my fellow panelists, it means many things. And that is to be able to figure out a way that we can use food to rebuild and reimagine our local and surrounding community, because we are, and we need to think of ourselves as a community, so that we have to face the fact that in many ways we're on our own, so we have to figure it out and what we can do to do that, and in the meantime do it together to sort of be there for each other. Maybe it sounds touchy-feely, but I think that says a little bit about it.
When I first started doing work on sustainable agriculture, which would have been in the sort of the late 80s, I actually relied on a definition that came out of the initial report from the UN Commission on Environment and Development, led by Gro Harlem Brundtland. And the definition they used for sustainability there, they said sustainable development is development that, I won't get the quote exactly right, but that that enables this generation, those who are living now, to meet their needs without compromising future generations to meet their needs on the planet. So it's a pretty broad definition. I actually, when we first started doing our funding work at Kellogg Foundation on sustainable agriculture, I consciously refused to define it, because we can get into this game, especially sort of an academic game, of spending all of our time trying to define what the term means. And I kind of figured, rather than spending our time defining what it means, we need to spend our time actually doing the work and letting the work help inform us about how that more general statement from that I mentioned from the United Nations Environment Development Group, how that can actually play out on the ground in communities and with projects.
Okay. Another question? Over here, this side.
Hi, my name is Chris Wright. I'm from the Urban Mushroom Farm in Ann Arbor. And I had a question more about distribution and education. Malik, you said that there were monthly co-ops that were available. And I was wondering, is this one central co-op, or are there co-ops spread out throughout the city? And then I guess my main question is about educating people on the distribution of these. What services are there to provide education to the community that these things are actually available, and what efforts have been made to educate the people about these?
Okay, I'm not sure of all the co-ops in the city of Detroit, but I was speaking of the one that our organization runs, which is a monthly food buying co-op, and we're hoping to morph that into an actual brick and mortar co-op. I believe that there's also a co-op at Earthworks Farm, from what I've heard. I don't know if any of the panelists. Okay. I believe there's a co-op at Earthworks Farm monthly as well. And beyond that, I'm not sure what other co-ops exist. But clearly, distribution is an area that we need to focus more attention on. The urban ag movement, I think, is focused mainly on the growing aspect. But once you grow it, then what are you going to do with it? Because even a backyard gardener can't consume all of the food that they grow. So I think that's one of the things that we're beginning to look at now collectively. You know, how do we take this food and begin to move it to market and begin to distribute it to people who have that need? There's a number of things that are being done to make people aware of the efforts within the food system. Certainly the Garden Resource Program, which we also participate in, has an excellent program, an educational series that I would recommend that has very widespread participation. Our organization has a lecture series that will be starting at the Detroit Public Library in April, which is designed to make people aware of issues related to the food system. Project Seed Wayne is doing excellent work in terms of informing people of these issues, and we're hopeful that the newly formed Detroit Food Policy Council will play a leadership role in bringing these issues to the forefront.
Thank you.
Just to add one thing to that question, the Garden Resource Program has a cooperative of urban farmers and gardeners called the Grown in Detroit Cooperative, and that's made up of about 90 gardeners at this point, all who are selling a portion of their produce to 4 weekly farmers markets, including the Wayne State Farmers Market, as well as a dozen restaurants around the city of Detroit. And they participate in a program that's coordinated by the Green Ribbon Collaborative, a collaborative between the Fair Food Network, Eastern Market Corporation, and Gleaners Community Food Bank with the Greening of Detroit, where a monthly box of produce, about 20 pounds of produce, is delivered to community centers on the east side and picked up by about 120 families at those community centers. All the produce, 10% of which is grown in Detroit, 90% is grown within 100 miles from the city. And Eastern Market is playing a really critical role in terms of connecting different opportunities to farmers and helping with distribution needs.
Okay. Question? Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Rich Castiles. I'm the director of the Green Recovery Project, which focuses on the downriver region of Wayne County. And the purpose of the project is to use the development of community gardens as a vehicle for social inclusion. As we all know, people with various types of disabilities and impairments are relatively marginalized from a lot of our community engagement efforts. And I was curious about what kind of things that you're involved with in terms of social justice and community engagement to bring in people with various types of disabilities into the process.
Our organization has partnered with a group called, and I may have the name wrong, but Citizens for Deaf Education, I believe it is. And we have about 30 hearing impaired people who come out to our farm weekly and who help with the cultivation and harvesting of crops. And it's been a very rewarding experience, both for the hearing impaired people who are working on the farm, as well as for those of us who are not hearing impaired who are interacting with them. So we plan to continue that partnership. And we're also looking at creating elevated raised beds so that those who are in wheelchairs can have access and can experience growing as well.
Please.
Hi, my name is Imani Jamal, student at Wayne State University. My main question was, to all of you, in terms of, we're talking about growing food in the communities and growing food all over the city of Detroit and things like that. How, I guess my question is to all of you, how do we use that as a vehicle for economic support in the communities? I see plenty of neighborhoods, whole blocks of, burnt down houses, empty lots, and just in terms of just money in that community itself, how do we use this as a vehicle to go ahead and help, get money into those communities to, do other stuff besides just the growing?
That's a great question. And starting with the Grown in Detroit cooperative members, 100% of the profits from their produce goes back to the cooperative member or their community garden. And that profit ranges anywhere from $25 a season to $15,000 a season at this point. It's only 3 years old and it's growing exponentially, so we think there's a lot of potential. With the Detroit Market Garden, which is a 3-acre farm, our business plan, and again, it's supposed to be a model market garden that is just the first generation to promote the next generation of dozens of market gardens across the city. Our business plan shows us producing about $100,000 in produce the first year of operation, with about a $40,000 net profit, which is higher than the current Detroit family household income, average Detroit family household income, and will be a proven model for a Detroit family to operate a small-scale farm in the city and have it be economically viable for their family.
If I could just perhaps address that and scale it up a little bit. Part of what we're trying to model at the Henry Ford, and I'll put my other hat on, the Food System Economic Partnership, is the fact that agriculture is a huge economic sector not only in this region but in the state of Michigan, and the fact that we need to see what we're going to do with that to take the place of manufacturing, which has been the biggest economic driver, but it isn't anymore. So what we're trying to model and what we have been doing by our local purchasing sort of on an institutional level is to examine the real and imaginary barriers that people have thought there were to how to sort of use that as an economic driver. So as these efforts scale up and there'll be more production, that we will have the markets ready, the larger markets ready for that sort of full circle to take place.
One of the things our group is doing, well, let me say this, that there's great economic potential for urban ag in Detroit. And many people see that. And all of the people who see that great potential don't have the objective of empowering the community in which that potential exists. For example, there's great economic potential in Africa, but those Africans in Africa receive very little benefit from the great economic potential. But, various European and Asian countries receive great benefit. So we have a similar situation here, and there are various models that are being proposed as far as what urban agriculture might look like in Detroit. So one of the things that our group is doing is organizing within the African community so that the majority population is an active participant in defining what this new economic model looks like, so that we don't have great profits being made in the city of Detroit where the profits are being extracted from our communities and the only benefit we have is perhaps having a job where we're working for somebody else. So we think that it's very important as we look at this idea of the economic empowerment of Detroit through urban agriculture, that we make sure that it's framed in such a way that the people living in Detroit benefit from it and it doesn't become another way to exploit Detroiters.
Thank you. Could I just take a break for a moment and ask how many U of M-Dearborn students are in the house? Raise your hand. All right. Excellent. Excellent. How many other students from other universities are here as well? I know we have a couple. Okay, great. Welcome. Thank you. That leads me into my question, which is about, to the panelists, what can universities do? And by universities, I mean students, faculty, staff. What can universities do to assist in the development of the urban agriculture movement? And also beyond that, I know Greening of Detroit works with green space initiatives too. So just the greening of Metro Detroit, how can universities help?
I'd like Provost to speak to that as well. Well, I'll take it since we have a university program. Universities can do a lot. Well, when I talk to my engineering colleagues, let me focus on research first. And I threw a question. I said, the research that's being done in engineering, who is that benefiting? Who are the groups that are the target groups? And are those groups local? Are they regional? And of course, some are. The automobile companies are local and regional, and so there's a lot of work going towards those. But people who are doing work with, for example, soil testing and the flow of chemicals across media and so on, they're not looking at urban agriculture as a target constituency. And now they're waking up to the fact that there are lots of questions that gardeners are asking and really want to know the answers that is not very complicated research, and a lot of research exists. There's really a way of translating that or doing it slightly in a different way to provide those answers to gardeners. For example, one question, can treated wood be used for building beds. And currently, now we don't treat wood with arsenic, right? We treat it with copper arsenate. And apparently that's safer because the chemicals don't move and arsenic doesn't release itself into the soil. But we don't know the answer to that question. People go on faith. Yes, I've used it for 5 years and I have no problem, or no, I would never use it. And so we're doing that. We're now testing beds made with different kinds of treatments and trying to figure out whether there's actually any effect. We're looking at airborne pollution of soil. So there's a lot of research that can be done within universities across disciplines: engineering, business, urban planning, sociology, anthropology, that could really help urban ag food system development in communities and in this region. Education. There's really no class that's offered in a university that isn't connected to community food systems in some way. I don't know, maybe mortuary science.
Which we don't
but
have.
still, hey, soil. It is. You're right. Okay, space research. Oh, I don't know about that. So, I mean, seriously, I challenge my colleagues and say, tell me a field that's not connected to food systems, and they cannot offer a field. And engagement. We are moving more and more in the direction of universities really trying to grapple with their role as citizens, not as corporations, which is what used to be in the 80s, right? The student was a client and, total quality management and all those kinds of things. We're now going back to really thinking about how universities can be a resource to build students as citizens. Our civic capacity. Engagement has become very important. Service learning, volunteering, and so on. And so increasingly the students who are getting into these kinds of projects and efforts are looking at food systems, urban agriculture, and so they're looking for places to reach out to, faculty they can talk to, groups they can connect with, and so on. And then operations. I want to especially emphasize operations. We're spending a lot of money on food, and we really need to re-examine, look very carefully at the impact of our spending. There's a lot of idealism among students, and with students, we've had very successful battles against sweatshops. Students against sweatshops. The universities have a mission related to building a better society. So we really need to think about not separating operations from our other core missions and really trying to integrate them. And we're trying to get our food service provider really to see how they could support local growers, think about the plastic ware they're using and how much it adds to the solid waste stream, composting, and so on, and try to integrate them. We have faculty experts who can speak to those issues, draw on the expertise to really improve our practices and be a model for other institutions and other universities. So universities can do a lot on food systems.
Thank you.
I mean, Bruce, as I start thinking about this question, I mean, it's like that could be the topic of the next symposium, right? But the first thing I think about is that I'm not sure there's been any successful social movement at least in the last couple of generations, that has not had the active participant leadership by university students. In my generation as a student, it was civil rights, it was the women's movement, it was the anti-war movement. I mean, I'm audacious enough to think that it was students who stopped the war in Vietnam back in the 70s. I truly believe it. And I believe that this good food movement is one of the callings of this generation of students. So there's a huge role of university students to play in this, and there's organizations starting to happen like the Real Food Challenge and so forth. But I also, on the research side, I happen to believe that research is actually a form of social planning, and that the questions that we're asking today define what our future looks like. So, for example, when I was on the faculty at Michigan State University, you could either ask a question, which herbicide is it going to take to control this weed in a corn monoculture, right? If that's the research question you ask, it defines a future of monoculture and herbicide use. If instead you ask the question, how can we develop a production system that yields economically viable amounts of crops like corn, reliant less on chemical herbicides? It's a completely different question, research question you're asking. It's going to lead you to a different research trajectory and a different future. So the questions we're asking in our research makes a huge difference. And then I go down to something really specific. You know, in the project we're right now unfolding, this double value coupon program, we need to be able to demonstrate the feasibility and effectiveness of these kinds of incentives for using federal food nutrition dollars to incentivize different kinds of purchasing and a different kind of a system. We're going to need to partner with very high quality university researchers to be able to do the evidence-based evaluation so we have the data to use in the public policy conversation. So the engagement with universities, the nonprofit community working with university researchers on this kind of evaluation is hugely important. And so those are a few places where I really see important engagement.
Sure, please, Malik.
Also, I want to recognize, first of all, my food system fairy god sister, Cheryl Danley from the C.S. Mott Group at Michigan State University. Can you raise your hand, Cheryl, please? And she has reminded me to inform you that next week there's the Michigan Good Food Summit in Lansing that we want to encourage people to attend. And part of that is putting together a Michigan Food Charter. So that is another way in which universities are playing a leadership role. The C.S. Mott Group at Michigan State University is one of the groups in the forefront of pulling together that Michigan Good Food Summit. So universities have tremendous potential in terms of influencing public opinion and should use that power to steer and direct people in positive directions.
Just one last quick thing. I really like what Kami said about not reinventing the wheel. And hopefully one of the things you're coming away with from this panel is that there's a lot of fertility in the city of Detroit and a lot of collaborations and a lot of really great work happening, all of which needs additional support, whether that's volunteers or whether that's research. So, you know, really look to what's here and ask, how can I help? And you'll absolutely find a way to plug in. Or there's always shopping at our local farmers markets and specifically buying grown in Detroit.
There's always shopping. Is not something you always hear in association with a social movement, but I like it. More questions? By the way, we are running over because we started late, so we are going to keep going for a little bit longer.
Okay, I'm Erika Giorda. I'm a PhD student at the University of Michigan, sociology. And I have a question and a curiosity. But first, I think that I also have something to say about the last question, because Michigan State, being a land grant, has extensions. And Michigan MSU extension, I think, has more than 1 foot in all the initiatives that are going on in Detroit. And that's a huge source of information available for free or nominal fees for almost everybody. My question to Ashley and everybody specifically, at the very beginning, Ashley, you mentioned the fact that the Eastern Market Farm is going to be the first legal operation, and okay, so somebody else noticed the legal. Can you elaborate a little bit? Because if that one is the first legal one, what about the others who are already working? And second, and that's more about a curiosity. One voice I see missing in this conversation and at this table is the voice of Native Americans. Probably there are not many Native American groups around Detroit, but still, this is is a relevant part of the American society. So I wonder what's happening on that side. Thank you.
So very briefly, agriculture and gardening is allowable in a park, property-owned park, and it's allowable as an accessory use to an allowed principal use in all zones. So, that's a little bit of urban planning. So what that leaves is if it's a principal use in any in any land category other than park, it's technically not legal. And one of the things about the Detroit Market Garden is we worked for 2.5 years to acquire that property and to change all of the legalities so that it is legal what we're doing, farming as a principal use. So that's what makes this project unique. That said, there are two really important efforts that have been in the making for a couple of years now, and that's the Detroit Food Policy Council, which Malik referred to. I think that's going to be really instrumental in changing, some of the political and policy environment around urban agriculture to facilitate urban agriculture in the city, and a work group that's making its way under the Detroit Food Policy Council, which is called the Urban Agriculture Work Group, which is head up by Catherine Underwood in the City Planning Commission. And that work group has been working on, really creating a suite of policies to actually get put into the zoning regulations for the city of Detroit to facilitate urban agriculture. So hopefully that answers that question. The other question, Native Americans in the city of Detroit, there's actually a significant population of Native American residents in the city, and we partner specifically with the American Indian Health and Family Services Organization in Southwest Detroit, where most of that community is centered, and they play a huge leadership role in Southwest Detroit in the Garden Resource Program Collaborative. So we're really happy to call them partners. American Indian Health and Family Services, 4880 Lawndale, Detroit, Michigan 48210.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Dan Calderon. I work with Food Gatherers, the food bank food rescue program in Washtenaw County. I want to take a little bit different angle where shopping doesn't really matter because people are economically challenged in a unique situation in Southeast Michigan. Our county has weathered the storm better than most, but we are very well connected with the food banks all around. People don't always have the choice to spend. They need food. I would like the panel to address the idea of support and networking with local food banks, gleaners, etc.
Yeah, actually there is in Detroit, there is a very active collaboration, as Ashley had mentioned, with the Gleaners Food Bank, helping to provide some of the food boxes and so forth. I can tell you my take on this. I mean, I also know the food gatherers and have been involved in them in Ann Arbor. My take on this is that the increase in the need for emergency food in our system is another symptom of our system being broken, and that at the same time we can't ignore people going hungry. We also have to think about what it's going to take to redesign this system so that symptom is not so harshly felt. Part of it certainly has to do with finding ways for people who need to be and want to be employed to find employment, or ways to make a living so they can be actively engaged in the food system, in the market food system. I think there's probably lots of other ways. I think about, for example, a model I saw some years ago in Western Massachusetts, where a food bank actually purchased a farm in that community and hired the farmer to run a CSA, and with the agreement that half of all the food that was grown on that farm was going to go to the food bank, and half of it could be used in a CSA to actually earn money to pay for the farmer and to keep the farm running. And I thought that was a pretty innovative way to think about a redesign of the food system in a small way, a model of redesign that was a both and. And I would encourage us to be constantly thinking about where those both and solutions are, where we're taking care of immediate needs, but at the same time we're creating opportunities for the future where people are not as dependent on having to find their food in food banks.
Good, thank you. And CSA is community-supported agriculture.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
sorry.
And yeah, there's some of us who are old-fashioned enough to think that food shouldn't be a commodity sold for profit at all, and that would be a long-term strategy maybe down the road to think about food as a right, nutrition as a right, as opposed to a profitable commodity. So, and that would go a long way towards getting us away from shopping as a solution. So thank you for that comment. Can we hear from an urban and regional studies major, Desiree Tolbert?
Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Desiree Tolbert. I'm urban and regional studies major here at the University of Michigan-Dearborn with a minor in GIS. But earlier you mentioned including the youth in this urban agricultural movement. And I was wondering if there was a way to possibly incorporate the urban farming educational movement into the curriculum of Detroit Public Schools.
So you are onto something there. We have a nutrition education department within our urban agriculture department at the Greening, and we have been working really intensively with a handful of schools doing gardening and nutrition education as part of the curriculum in K through 8 classrooms. That curriculum is now standardized and correlated with the GLICs, which are the standards and benchmarks, which is a really great tool and resource for teachers across the district. In addition to that, we have 55 schools that are very active in the Garden Resource Program Collaborative, and we're able to share that curriculum and do some teacher training to really promote not only having school gardens, but using the school gardens as an educational tool and resource. In addition to that, we have programs outside of the school setting. Youth Growing Detroit is a program that's run this will be the 3rd year for middle and high school students. There's 100 students involved throughout the city who are learning leadership development, learning more about the food system, and specifically all the skills they need to get food to market from growing them in gardens across the city. And this year we're launching a youth apprenticeship program, which is kind of a step up in the ladder of training, which is a paid internship, which really hones agricultural skills and leadership with high school students in the Detroit public school system.
Also, just to let you know that Betty Wiggins, who has the Office of Food Services for Detroit Public Schools, is working with other departments within DPS to create additional school gardens, to activate greenhouses, and to fold all of that into the curriculum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Richard Mott, and this is my first year being involved in the Green Recovery Project, a project that's in the Downriver community that's working with all people, including people with disabilities, to be able to be involved in gardening. And I'm also a native of the great state of Louisiana, home of the Super Bowl champions. And in Louisiana, I fondly recall how families and communities would get together and they would have all the trading of vegetables and fruit and everything, and they would prepare for the winter, and they would all survive grandly through that project. So my question is, how do we rip off and duplicate a system that would include everyone?
Well, there are some great programs that exist that not only from Ashley's purview, but from some of the other groups that are working in the urban setting that, for example, we from the Henry Ford go into some of those and actually give classes on how to cook with fresh things. And also at the Henry Ford on our campus, and some of the things that we do in Greenfield Village that I mentioned about how to incorporate the sort of the historical perspective is about demonstrating and keeping the skills alive of food preservation and some of the things that you mentioned that speak to the seasonality in our region here, because actually, obviously we can't grow food year round, but we can take some of the food that we're growing and learn the methods that have been used for generations to extend season and to have food to keep you until it starts to grow outside again. So we view what we do as a place where not only can we teach people and show people how those things happen, but actually employ other people and a next generation of people who will continue to be able to know how to do that stuff so it doesn't get lost.
And I definitely invite our friends from downriver to participate in any of the educational workshops offered by the Garden Resource Program Collaborative, which include things like community kitchens where we press apples into cider, where we learn and relearn canning, where we learn preservation and fermentation, in addition to all the gardening workshops that you can really imagine, anything you can think of. We're basically teaching either with experts like Adam over there from the Student Organic Farm, or community members who have an expertise in one area or another who are teaching other community members.
Thank you. This is actually, in some ways, it's a return to the home economics for the 21st century, but in a way without the gender stereotypes or without the baggage. It's refreshing to see, because my own research is on the old home economics and what economists actually lost when women were segregated by gender into home economics programs, even though they had PhDs in economics. So I'm interested to see the way in which community kitchens are taking hold again, and the way in which nutritional education is taking root again in a new generation. So thank you. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Amy Heath. I'm the director of Livingstone's Community. We're a nonprofit social enterprise in Washtenaw County that is bringing together the concerns of food security with also those of prisoner reentry. I'm wondering if you are aware of anyone in the Detroit area that is serving the folks that are coming out of our state's prisons, another very unsustainable system in the state of Michigan. Inside there are tremendous horticultural programs that folks still have access to, and so we're helping folks get their feet on the ground in Washtenaw County and in urban farming, but we're also a micro-enterprise incubator to help launch them into work of their own. And I'm wondering, because we're kind of a different animal, if there's anybody that we could connect with in Detroit that you're aware of, or if there's anybody in the room that is also addressing the needs of reentry in the state of Michigan.
There's a large proposal that's in the developmental stages by the Shar House, which proposes to take returning citizens and employ them in urban agriculture work. So I would suggest you connect with them.
I have contacts as well that are outside but are setting up programs around this kind
of thing. We have two more. Students from, actually, I'm going to introduce you a little. Okay. Ariel and Dana from my first year seminar class last year, which was based on the theme Fast Food Nation. So they know a lot, hopefully. So make it good.
Hi. Okay, so yeah, as he was saying, we were part of a first year seminar last semester where we got to learn about the problems of the food system not only in the United States but at UM-Dearborn. And at the end of the semester, we compiled a report. Everyone in the class had their own part in it, and then we put it together at the end. And we met with Provost Davey a couple weeks ago to discuss some of the ideas that we had that we can do on campus, and we were wondering if you had any advice for us how to push this forward, and like any advice how we can do more on campus to get sustainability and improve our system here.
One of the things that helped us make an argument for AVI to do more on our campus was that AVI does a lot more on other campuses. So AVI, for example, is also the food service provider for Kenyon College, and Kenyon College has a whole sustainable operations program. And so we said, why can't we have that here? And part of it is also our administrators coming on board. So finding models of what what your food service provider is doing elsewhere that you would like to see happen here, or what other food services providers are doing in other universities that you consider models, would be an excellent first step. There are lots of other things to do as well that I think my co-panelists might suggest.
I mean, I love Cammie's new definition of R&D. Was it rip off and duplicate? But anyway, if you haven't connected with the Real Food Challenge, that's a great place. It's an organization now that is creating connections among students at campuses all over the country who are thinking of the same kinds of things that you are. And so you'd find lots of both rich ideas, support for what you're doing, connection to other students. It's really, it's to me, it looks like the core of the student movement that's building around this issue. So the Real Food Challenge and Anim Steele would be the person for you to contact, and I can get you in touch with him.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, 3 things. I would like these 3 gentlemen and lady over here to be able to come up and talk with you first before everyone else, descends on our panelists. So we're going to wrap it up now, and please come up and talk with the panelists. There are breakout rooms in the concourse, also across the hall. Take these with you when you go. Remember, you have an inventory sheet so that anything you aren't able to communicate, you have a last resort here to get information to us. And I want to thank our panelists for sharing their thoughts with us this morning. We're just delighted to have you, and we hope you can stay with us for more of the day. Thank you.